immune survey is just a review, rather, is just not basic. The immune system is not simple. It is complicated, and it should be. It's protecting us from outside threats and inside threats. And I love this little cartoon because that's really what these white cells of your immune system look like. They're a strange bunch of looking cells, and they all have a very, very specific role to play, and part of the way they look has to do with that. But just as an overview first. So we defend ourselves from threats in a lot of different ways, and the immune system is one part of that. And so I want to explain to you where that part fits. So the brain and the immune system are really the same things in my mind, at least. They both are the only systems that have real memory, right? You hit the stove, the hot stove once, you don't do it again. You see a vaccine like polio, you'll never forget what polio looks like. Immune cells and brain cells both have memory. That's the real key. And so they are, not surprisingly, very intimately connected. They send signals back and forth constantly. The brain is worried about primarily external threats. The immune system is primarily concerned with internal threats, but clearly there's no real boundary there, and they need to be in cahoots, and they are. The second thing to note is that the immune system is primarily located, about 80% of those cells is in the gut. And the gut is home to the microbiome, which we'll get into in a second, but essentially the microbiome is 100 times more bacteria than we have living cells, and it helps us a lot when it's healthy. So the immune system and the brain are together. The immune system lives in the gut, and the gut is also home to the microbiome. And that's kind of what we're going to be covering a little bit today. My clicker still doesn't work. I keep forgetting. So the immune system is not just those pretty cells I showed you about. Really, the immune system is all over your body. You may know you get lymph nodes when you have a sore throat. Those are all strategically placed to stop infections from moving from part to part. We also have lymph fluid and lymphatic system all over our bodies that carries important fighting components all over. The tonsils are immune, the thymus is immune, the MALT and the GALT refer to all the cells that take up the mucosal MALT immune system, and the GALT, the gut mucosal immune system. So everywhere where the environment, external environment might come into contact with us, there's an immune boundary there. The spleen cleans up old immune cells and refreshes them, if you will. There's an entire immune system for the lung, because outside air comes into our body. We need to defend against that if there's a problem. The brain has an entire amazing immune system of its own as well, because the blood-brain barrier is not perfect, so things can get into the brain as well. And the bone marrow makes all of it. And they make these white blood cells that are what most people think of when they think of the immune system. I keep forgetting it doesn't work. And here are the players of those white blood cells. And what's cool is that this is an amazing fighting force. If you put our immune system to, compare it to, Bond 007, Special Ops, the Rangers, U.S. Navy SEALs, put all of the best defense things in the world together, and they pale. They would be jealous of some of the things that these little cells can do for us in defending us. So some of these cells are specific to viruses, some are specific to parasites, some work only on bacteria, some are only surveillance cells. They look around all over, is there a problem, is everything okay? If not, they call the guards. Some are suppressor cells. They're like, guys, that's just pollen, leave it alone, it's not gonna hurt us. And other cells are instigators, other cells are regulators. So it's a very complicated system. Every cell has a job that's very, very specialized, just like in special ops, right? There's a commander who looks at the whole field and says, you go over there. And then there's specialized forces that do a very special job. And that's what these cells are kind of representing. And so there's lots of different ways that they protect us. This is just a cartoon of, of a T cell eating up a bacteria, a white cell rather, eating up a bacteria, because that's one of the things they do. Some of them just eat them up whole. Some of them bomb them. Some of them plant a little thing that they explode later on their own. Some white cells have tricks to just immobilize bacteria, just make them sticky so they can't move, they can't invade us or bother us. All sorts of different ways. And on the right of the screen is just a little example of what antibodies and what's called a pathogen, a bad bug, look like. So antigens have lots of different ways that they protect us. They can make a bug sticky, like I just said. They can stick to a bug as a flag, as a signal. yoo-hoo, other white cells, come over here and take care of this for me. They can do all sorts of different messaging. So antibodies are critical, but not just in one or two ways. They're really an integral part of how this all works in terms of messaging and communication to other cells. And the other thing about antibodies I don't want to forget to mention is the first set of antibodies that may come out in an infection are non-specific. They're just like armies, like let's just move and take care of this problem. The second round of antibody cells are very specific to the problem, and that's what's called an adaptable response. What that means is that our immune systems are able to make an antibody to a thing it has never seen before. Totally unique thing. The system can adapt and make a specific antibody, lock and key mechanism for a unique new threat. That's pretty cool. The immune system is also scalable. It is quiescent when things are good and can ramp up its effort in a flash if it needs to, if it's being invaded, if there's a serious threat. But the most important thing of all I want to stress today is that the immune system has to be able to have a proportional response, right? You cannot create a fever and snot and coughing and aches and pains for nothing. You have to have a reason to potentially damage your own tissue and put yourself in bed. So there has to be a proportional response. Pollen, again, something that really doesn't hurt us, versus Ebola, something that definitely could hurt us. There has to be a different response to those two things. And then just as importantly, with the proportionate response, it has to end when the threat is over. There has to be white cells that say, enough, the bug is dead, stop making inflammation, stop making all this hubris to kill these bugs, they're gone, we're safe, relax. And that whole system is what's so complicated. This is a slide to express that complication, not that I expect you to read it. Believe me, I can hardly read it. It just shows you different kinds of white cells being produced in a line depending on the need of the body at that moment. You can make more of one kind or another, right? Just like special ops, depending on what you need more of than the other. But the little fine print in between each pretty colored cell are what are called cytokines. There are inflammatory or non-inflammatory molecules. They're chemical messengers. They have lots of different names. They're typically called inflammatory messengers, but in truth, some of them are anti-inflammatory. Again, we have to balance the system out. So there's a lot of complicated signaling that goes on to tell a cell, go over there, because there's a problem over there, we're fine here, versus get ready for an attack. We have news from the skin that something has invaded and we need to get ready. All of that complication, communication-wise, takes place with these chemicals typically referred to as cytokines. So my question to you guys is, what are you going to boost? When people talk about boosting the immune system, it kind of scares me. It's like, okay, now I can arm my immune system. I can give it everything it needs to do the right thing. But which part of it do you think I should boost? I look at it that, you know, if I have trained forces, they know better what needs to be done. They just need to have their equipment. They need to have everything that they need to function optimally, but they don't need to be told or kicked in the butt to boost one direction or another. And when you do that, it has potential serious side effects. Now, to be fair, I'm a word freak. I love words and I like using them carefully. Boost is a term that you'll see everywhere. It's even in medical papers. It's just a commonly used term that I think means improve the immune system, but I don't like it because it implies that you can make the immune system work a specific way better. I don't think that's true. I think things that sometimes boost the immune system really screw it up, really boost it in the wrong direction. So mistakes that the immune system makes are pretty serious and they happen. So autoimmunity is an epidemic at this point. It's going out of control, rising in every single part of the Western world. We can become immune to our own body in lots of different places, from our DNA to our skin to everything else in between. And so autoimmunity is when the immune system loses tolerance. It forgets what's good and what's bad and creates antibodies against a threat that's not a threat, it's you. Allergies are the other end. Allergies are when the immune system overreacts to the wrong things, like pollen, like peanuts. Like peanuts don't hurt anybody unless they get stuck in your throat, but a lot of people get very, very ill and even die from peanuts, even if they're not even close to them or touching them from across the room. That's the immune system making a really big mistake. There are genetic variations in everything, in everything about us, and this is no exception. There's genetic variations as to how well this kind of white cell or that kind of white cell might function. Some people have a really good way to fight off viruses and never get cold sores. Other people always get cold sores. It's not the end of the world, but it's just an example of specific susceptibility that we all have because of our genetic inheritance. And then the other biggest, most common mistake of the immune system that I think we've all had to deal with at some point or another is chronic inflammation. So inflammation is those cytokines I told you about, those chemical messengers can cause inflammation. Inflammation is one of the most important tools. It's one of the guns. It's one of the tools that the immune system uses to kill and immobilize threats. And inflammation is really important. You've had it when you cut your finger, it gets red, swollen, hot, tender. That's the definition of inflammation. The trick is when the threat is gone and the finger is healed, all the inflammation should stop and go away. And that's not always happening for a bunch of reasons. One of them is we have so many threats coming in, including toxins, that the immune system gets a little confused. But the main reason is that the signals to turn inflammation off are largely nutritional. So if we're deficient in things like vitamin D and other nutrients, we're going to have a hard time turning that inflammation off when we need to. And then we end up with low-grade chronic inflammation, which we now know is an underlying cause of almost every chronic illness that there is. Because inflammation is good in the right dose at the right time, but it has to stop when the threat is gone. And that's another issue. So again, we've got the brain and the immune system, the gut and the microbiome. Here's just a little cartoon example of what can happen. So the blue guy on the left is a bacteria in your gut, part of your microbiome, meaning the guts that we want there, that we need to be part of our body. And it has just spotted a virus in the gut. And so it's calling for help. It's calling a scouting surveillance immune cell somewhere else and saying, we've got a problem down here. I need some help in the gut. And the immune cell immediately responds and sends troops down to that area to check it out or to kill that bug or to immobilize it. So there's an ongoing interplay between the microbiome and our immune system, luckily, because the microbiome is a big deal. And if you haven't heard of it yet, you will. And if you have, you're going to hear more because it's just a baby study science right now, but it's going to explode. The microbiome represents all the microbes that we have in and on our body. So we're covered in bacteria, some yeasts, some viruses. They're all part of us. The majority of them, like our immune system, live in our gut. And in our gut, there are 10 times more bacterial cells than human cells. In our body, there's way more than 10 times more bacterial cells to human cells, which can lead us to the question of what are we? And when we have a craving, who's craving it, our microbiome or us? But that's another discussion for another day. The other interesting thing about the microbiome is that there's thousands of different species of bacteria in this microbiome that lives with us. And not only do we have more bugs than cells, but we have 100-fold more bacterial DNA in our bodies than we have human DNA. Because all of these microbes in our gut have their own little bacteria, have their own little genetic material, rather. Each bacteria has a piece of genetic material. And so there's lots more of them than us at the end of the day. There's much more variation between your microbiome and my microbiome than there is between our genetic variation. Even if you're tall, I'm short, you're white, I'm black, anything you want. Two human beings have more similar genetics than any two microbiomes do, because it's very movable, it's very changeable. So the microbiome protects us from bad bugs. They are good bacteria that protect us from bad bacteria. Sometimes about just making a layer where the bad bugs can't penetrate. It can be as simple as that. Or it can be that, like I said before in the cartoon, it actually attracts our immune system and tells it stuff, gives it information that those yeast over there were fine. They were behaving for the last few weeks. They weren't doing anything, but now they've raised a family and now they've tripled in numbers and now they're a problem. That's the kind of interaction that your microbiome and your immune system have. The microbiome breaks down our food. I mean, we would not be alive without the microbiome. Let's make that very clear. We totally depend on it just as much as they depend on us for a place to live. So they break down a lot of our food, and they do two very important things with that food. From our fiber, the fibers that we don't use, the insoluble fibers, they eat those, the microbiome eats those fibers, and then produce in turn these compounds that our gut cells really need to live, that really need to thrive. So without fiber in your diet, your microbiome is very unhappy and very unhealthy. In addition to the fiber thing, the microbiome also makes a whole bunch of vitamins for us and some amino acids. It makes vitamin K, it makes B12, and there's several others. So a healthy microbiome feeds you several different ways. It takes the food you give it and it makes better food from it if you let it, if you give it the right food. It can transform one to the other, like I just said. So if you give your body 5 different nutrients, but you have a healthy microbiome, that healthy microbiome will make 20 phytonutrients out of those 5 to feed the rest of your body. It's very, very cool and symbiotic. And lastly, this is like science fiction. If you put it in the movie, no one will believe you, but this is true. A brand new white cell pops out of the bone marrow called an immature white cell. It doesn't quite know what to do yet. It's a very complicated thing. And so literally, an adult mature white cell takes that new white cell in hand and accompanies it to the gut, where the new baby white cell learns that it's not just self and not self, it's good E. coli, bad E. coli. It's good yeast, bad yeast. It's all these nuanced things that it takes to be in this huge vat, this microbiome with thousands of bacteria for this new young white cell to be able to learn what's good, what's bad, what's its job to do. Kind of science fiction-y, but true. I love it. And then most important perhaps for some of us, the microbiome in the brain, not just the immune system in the brain, but the microbiome specifically in the brain also have an intimate connection. They communicate constantly through messengers of chemicals and so on. And so your gut microbiome is hugely responsible for your mood. And people are looking at that right now in terms of treating everything from schizophrenia and autism, depression, anxiety by the interaction of the microbiome in the brain. A lot of research yet to come. The composition of your microbiome has something to do with the way you store fat versus make muscle and the way you take care of bone and bone loss. So lots and lots of things. We have much, much yet to learn. What we do know is that you feed the microbiome good food called prebiotics, mostly fibrous good foods, plant foods. It acts well. You feed the good bugs, more good bugs grow and you're good. When you feed the microbiome the bad stuff, the sugar primarily, the refined starches, it encourages the bad bugs of your microbiome to grow and squelches the good guys. And now you've shifted the balance and you have a microbiome that's not as healthy as you might like. And so there's lots of articles you can look up in terms of the Western American diet doing damage and harming the immune system by paralyzing it essentially. So moving on from the microbiome for a minute, although we could spend hours on the microbiome, or at least I could, maybe you couldn't. Let's move on to other things that affect the immune system. And the title says 12, and I will give you the summary of all 12 after we've gone through them in more detail at the end. So no worries if you're not keeping up with the numbers as we go along. Sleep. Sleep is huge. So we've got brain immune, right? So brain sleep makes sense. Anxiety, everything having to do with the brain is going to affect your immune system. So most Americans do not get the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And just a scientifically quickie slide for those of you that are into science and nerdy like me, that sleep specifically inhibits a whole bunch of things that would harm the immune system. Lack of sleep does the opposite. There's tons of data that not sleeping enough raises inflammation, HSCRP, for example, and you can lower inflammation simply by getting a good 8 hours every single night. So sleep, the brain, the immune system all have multiple hormones and multiple chemicals that make them interact. Here's a funny little study. I'm not sure who volunteered for this, but I'm grateful to them. People volunteered to be in this study where they were going to have influenza virus shot up their nose. Right? So what they did was divide the group up into 2. And as you see here, the folks that slept not a lot the week before they were inoculated with influenza virus, they typically got the virus half the time. So if they did not sleep well the week before, they caught the virus half and half. Whereas the people that slept just 7+ hours every night the week before, they only had an 18% chance. 38% difference is a drug, folks. 38% difference would make any drug manufacturer jump up for joy that that's an immense, enormous response. That's just huge. So simple, basic things, and I'm all for people looking for the next fancy thing for their immune function, but if you don't have the basics like sleep, you know, why bother? Why bother to go spend money on the next best thing if you're not doing what the basic body needs to function first? If you can't sleep right now, because I know things are tough and it's kind of crazy and some of us are really anxious, don't worry, because I don't want to put more pressure on you to sleep if you're not sleeping. It turns out meditation works just about as well as sleep. 20-minute meditation is about equivalent to an hour and a half sleep. And there's tons of studies. This is a summary of 20 randomized controlled trials showing that even just a little bit of meditation, even just 8 minutes a day for 8 weeks can change your brain and visibly on scans. But more importantly for our talk, it can raise your immune function and lower inflammation. So if you've been thinking about meditating, now's the time. If you think you can't do it, you're right, no one can. That's not the point. It's the trying of it that makes it work. It's the effort of calming your brain down. You can't stop thoughts from coming in and out. So no worries there. And then the next big topic is food. And food, if you think about it, feeds everything we've talked about so far: the brain, the immune cells, the microbiome. Everything needs food, right? Food is the most basic thing of all, but there are tons of studies that the quality of the food that you eat affects both your microbiome and your immune system and your brain for that matter. So food is really, really important. Tons of studies on immune studies again, and the Western diet. This is just a review of some of those studies. And so at the end of the day, you know, if you want to have optimal immune function, you got to have optimal nutrition. There's just no way around that. And the truth is that nutrition is important, and nutritional deficiencies cause suboptimal immunity, period. End of story, no debate. If your nutrition isn't optimal, your immune system cannot function optimally. It is that important. And just, you know, we're not deficient in vitamin C or any specific vitamin or mineral as a rule. We're deficient in plants as a country, as a society, as the Western world even, that's imported our diets. We are not going to be healthier by taking every single supplement on the shelf on the left there. We're going to be healthier if we changed our diets and ate more colorful produce, because that's what we're deficient in. We're deficient in antioxidants and a balanced system of nutrition, not isolated individual nutrients that some lab came up with and some scientists decided it was the right dose. We're all different. It doesn't work that way. And that's in fact why the USDA every 5 years redoes their dietary guidelines. They're about to come out with a new set shortly. And for the last 4 of these 20 years, I'm sure about the last 15, let me just say that, they have increased the size of each portion of vegetables and fruit and the number of servings of each of those. Every single 5 years, that's gotten to be more and more important because the science says so, because they can't avoid the fact that that's what the science says. And just an example, recently Tufts University just figured out if we just subsidized by 30% just fruits and vegetables, we would save over $100 billion in medical costs per year, including the subsidy money. So, you know, when I hear people talk about it's access to healthcare that's making us all sicker, we need more access to healthcare, I respectfully disagree. It's access to fresh food. It's access to affordable, nutritious food. Then we wouldn't need so many healthcare accesses. We wouldn't need so many clinics and hospitals and doctors. If we can save 100 billion, that represents millions and millions of lives lost that we don't need to lose. It's about nutrition, not about access. But here's the problem. Currently, their recommendations are 7 to 13 servings a day, in part because our food has become less nutritious over the last 10, 20 years. Some things are 40% less nutritious because of the way they're grown, because of the quality of the soil, because of shipping times, because they're picked unripe, all sorts of reasons. But the produce that we're getting is nothing like the produce our great-grandparents had. Just nothing like it. So we need more and more servings, and that's part of it. The other part is we have more and more toxins in us from the environment, and that requires more and more nutrition to compensate for as well. But at the end of the day, our USDA is currently recommending that the minimum per person is 7 servings of produce a day. So, you know, if you're a family of 4 and you go with 7, not the 13, which is the range, 7 to 13 servings a day, then you're looking at 196 servings of produce per week for a family of 4. And that's just really not going to happen for most people, even if they could afford it, even if they were going to eat it, know how to prepare it, enjoyed eating it, had time to chew it all, right? It's just not likely to happen every single day, even though some of us, myself included, make it happen most days. It's just not always possible. And yet that's what our bodies need to not only have a healthy immune system and a healthy brain, a healthy microbiome, to prevent cancer, Alzheimer's, all of it. Every chronic illness studied has been improved significantly with more produce. Not less salt, not less fat, not less fast food, specifically with more produce. In fact, the data is pretty clear that if we all would eat 80% of our diets as vegetables, primarily, some fruit a little bit, but vegetables are the key thing. If we ate 80% of our meals were vegetables, the rest wouldn't matter because we'd have enough of everything we need to compensate for whatever else is going on. And just by the way, especially during this time that we're all a little worried about frozen versus organic versus not, eating regular conventional produce is way better than not eating it because you're concerned about some pesticides. So the risk of having non-organic food is minor compared to the risk of not having vegetables. So always go for the vegetables and fruit. The Dirty Dozen would be my only guide to avoiding those top 12 pesticide foods. But even then, in a pinch, I'd rather eat the raspberries that are not organic than not eat them because they're that good for you. So that's why I'm just really thrilled to be associated and partnered up with this company called Juice Plus for the last 20 years now, because they have a solution to all of this. They have a tenable, affordable, convenient, elegant, and research-backed solution to all of these problems that we're all facing right now. We need more fruits, vegetables, and berries. We can't afford them. We don't eat them. So the Juice Plus company has made 2 amazing products that I want to tell you a little bit about. The first is the capsules called Juice Plus, and they come in 3 colors, flavors: berries, fruit, and vegetables. It's food. It's not a supplement. That's what I want to be clear about. The label is a supplement. I'm sorry, the label is a food label, not a supplement label. It's the only capsule I know of in the world that has a food label. And that's because the FDA agrees it's food. It's not processed, it's not changed, it's not done in a lab, it's food. It's real food. It's grown by the company itself, vine ripened. They control everything from seed to harvest so that they get the most nutritious foods. And they process them immediately on site. So that locks in the nutrition, and they're kept almost frozen at that point on, so you keep the nutrition all along. And then the water's kind of just blown off of this pulverized produce, and you get just a whole food concentrate powder. That's really all that they do. So you're getting the benefits of 30 raw fruits, vegetables, and berries in a capsule that is not the same as eating. We don't want anyone to think that. It is a bridge for what we should be eating to what we don't, to make up that difference. It's a way to give a little insurance to the diet that you're trying to get but haven't quite gotten there yet, or that some days I fail miserably when I'm traveling. That's what Juice Plus is. It's a way to bridge the gap between what we should be doing and what we just can't do right now. It's independently certified by NSF, which is the premier not-for-profit lab that certifies everybody important. And they claim, they do the analysis rather, and they verify that we have no heavy metals, that we have no crap, that we have nothing that we say we don't have, and everything that we say we have is in fact there. And NSF also actually verifies our brochures, our websites, all of our claims and our labels, so that you know that it is not just marketing. It is the most researched product in the world, and that's really why I'm involved. Is now 27 years of clinical trials using Juice Plus capsules. That's over 40 peer-reviewed, published, controlled trials all over the world, in things from pregnant women to cancer survivors to elite athletes, all across the board. And these studies are published in major journals, which I'll show you in a minute. I mentioned affordable. I want to get back to that because that's really important. 30 raw fruits and vegetables. If you just tried to buy one thing of berries right now, it would cost you more than an entire day's serving of Juice Plus capsules. So $2.50 a day gets you the fruit, vegetable, and berry blend capsules that have been shown in all this research to do such wonderful things that I'll mention in a minute. There's a program called Family Study. It gets your children Juice Plus for free for up to 4 years, ages 4 to 18, and even longer if they're in college. Pretty neat. And we have a protein powder that's also all plants, also just as clean as our capsules. It's delicious. And then there's a new product called Omega Blend, which is a fishless omega-3 fish oil made from algae and 5 different cold pressed seeds. It's very powerful, good stuff. We have been published and studied in major medical centers all around the world. Charity Hospital, the largest hospital in Europe, Yale, one of my alma maters. You get the idea. If you're known by the company you keep, I would like to be in this company, and I'm glad to say I am. I can't go over all the research with you. Obviously, it would take hours, but I just want to show you that the first thing that caught my eye all these years ago when I was looking at this with very skeptical eyes, I have to admit, very, very cynical, skeptical eyes when I first saw this stuff. The first set of studies were impressive and mind-changing, I would say. And these are bioavailability studies. Very few supplements, if any, have this, and certainly none of them have 20 like Juice Plus does. What this says is that what's in the capsule gets into your bloodstream and your cells, because it really doesn't matter what's on the label if it doesn't get into your body. And so over and over and over, Juice Plus has shown that not only does it get in, it does exactly what you would predict to happen if you were actually eating 30 raw fruits, vegetables, and berries. Meaning your vitamin C levels in your blood go way up, your vitamin E levels go up, your antioxidant levels go way up, your free radical levels go way down, your inflammation markers go way down. All sorts of good things happen just from taking these capsules. They would happen if you were able to eat 30 raw fruits and vegetables every day, chew them, digest them, absorb them. It would happen also, but it's nice to have something that's affordable and convenient that has proven that it is a legitimate bridge to healthier nutrition. And then there's 5 studies on inflammation, which I mentioned a minute ago is kind of a bad player when it's chronic. We have tons of studies showing that we always reduce inflammation. And then on this topic, we have 4 really great immune studies that I'm not going to have time to go into. I wanted you to know that they exist because that's kind of why I'm here. That's kind of why I'm talking. Everything I'm talking about in this talk today is research-based. If it's not, if it's my opinion, I will tell you that. But so far, it's all based on studies and research, things that you can all find in PubMed, just the way I did. So these 4, the 5th one is a review. So these 4 clinical trials on the immune studies, just briefly, the best one I think was at Charity Hospital, largest hospital in Europe and Belgium, where they studied nurses primarily and some doctors during flu season. And they found a very significant drop in symptoms and in missed days in the group that took Juice Plus compared to the placebo that did not, more than 20%. Again, that's huge. Just from a capsule of fruits and vegetables for $2.50 a day. 20% less 6 days, less bad symptomatic days of the people that are on the front lines, getting coughed on and spit at all day long. That's hard to do. Another one of these studies was done on law students. It was supposed to be a stress study during their exams. It turned out to be a double stress study because they had a hurricane in their exams during this study. So these are healthy young people, right, law students. And they too had a massively improved level of immune function, not a boosting, just an improvement. Just their immune system was able to do what they are supposed to do. They also had increased levels of antioxidants, vitamin C, and so on. And then this was done on elite athletes, another different kind of group, also really hard to improve when you're already an elite level. And yet in just 28 days, the group that was given Juice Plus did significantly better in terms of immune functions and free radicals as well compared to the placebo group. And then lastly, elderly smokers. Again, hard group to fix. They're already stuck in their ways and their body's already been some wear and tear. And yet Juice Plus compared to placebo showed a significant improvement in elderly smokers and the non-smokers as well, to the point where the researchers in this study were shocked because they had never seen anything help in smoking in patients who continued to smoke during the study. And yet this did. So 4 huge important studies looking at all different groups. When I say our products make a difference, I really mean that clinically, personally, over and over and over again. When you feed the body 30 raw fruits, vegetables, and berries that you can absorb that are clean, magical things happen. When you flood your body with those kinds of powerful nutrients and antioxidants, people heal, people just do better. Now, to be fair, you can't feel prevention. So a lot of the benefits that we get from Juice Plus are not maybe noticeable, but I'm really happy that I don't have to notice chest pain or a lump somewhere or all those things I don't notice because I've been taking, because I've been taking Juice Plus for so long. And then on the other side of this page is one of my other favorites. It's called the Tower Garden. And the Tower Garden enables us, this little patio picture there, enables us to grow food almost anywhere. I have one in my living room. I'm looking at it right now inside of my living room. This is a deck, obviously. They're only 3 foot across, 5 or so feet high, depending on how many levels you want to grow. So you can grow 20 to 28 plants in your house to feed your family for pennies, for nothing. It grows super fast. It's cleaner than clean. It takes up very little water, very little space. You can start making your money back. They're also very affordable, but even just within 6 weeks, you can be eating 3 weeks if you're in a rush and you want some salad, but 3 to 6 weeks, you're significantly eating off your tower. You're saving money at the grocery store by not having to buy celery and parsley and lettuce, and the list goes on. And then over time, you're going to get tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and anything you want to grow that doesn't have a root, you can grow in a tower garden. They are phenomenal. And when I tell a mom on food stamps with 3 kids that she has to get 7 servings of vegetables for all of her kids on food stamps, that's not going to happen. But she can get a tower. She can grow her own food and feed her family a way healthier diet for much, much less money. We all can. Towers are amazing. So just real briefly, supplements cannot make up for a bad diet, but there is a role for supplements. It's just that you can't overdo real food. You can't overdo supplements. So always start with the food, maximize your nutrition with the food first, and then maybe judiciously add a few supplements as well. So zinc is one of the most important foods that we all need for our immune function, in addition to the things I've mentioned, the antioxidants and so on. And so here's some really zinc-rich foods. They're primarily nuts and seeds, lentils, legumes. Oysters happen to have an incredible amount of zinc if you like them, like I do. Lean meats do too. There's a bunch of foods that have zinc that are pretty much all healthy foods. On the bottom here is a picture of different legumes and spices. On the top is turmeric, curcumin, a really great anti-inflammatory. And then mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms can be really helpful as well for immune health. So beyond those basics of food, I suggest everybody take vitamin D. I have measured, I don't know how many thousands of people at this point of vitamin D. I've never seen anybody with an adequate level of vitamin D who wasn't taking some. Unfortunately, the sun just doesn't do it anymore for a bunch of reasons we can go into some other time, but we don't make enough vitamin D from the sun anymore. You can't count on it. So please do take some, because your immune system is just totally one arm behind its back if you don't have enough antioxidants and enough vitamin D. So I think everybody should take those basic things. Zinc, if you're eating a lot of zinc foods, you may or may not want to, but right now in cold and flu season, it's a good idea to gargle with zinc or have a little additional zinc unless you're really good on those zinc-rich foods. Vitamin C is raised plentifully with fruits, vegetables, berries, and with Juice Plus. But if you need more, if you're sick, if you're fighting something, intravenous or liposomal is the best kind of vitamin C to use. I mentioned turmeric already. CoQ10, glutathione, NAC all have some pretty good evidence in helping the immune system fight off viruses, some bacteria, and other things. And then, of course, our good old probiotics, which help our microbiome. Garlic, which is a great antimicrobial, as is oregano, and bee propolis has been used since we've been around the planet and had bees, and it's great stuff as well. There are many other things you could add to a list for immune support, but honestly, if you did all the basics, you wouldn't need to add a lot more. If you're sleeping, if you're meditating, if you're doing all the things I'm going to talk about in a second, you really don't need to go too much crazier than that to have a functional, healthy, optimal immune system. So just to refresh real quick before we wrap this up, we've got the immune system is connected to the brain, right? They're the same system. The immune system lives in the gut, and the gut is home to the microbiome. So we got that. That's kind of how the whole thing works together. So it's not just your immune system. And that food is the common denominator for all of that. You need food for your brain. You need food for the microbiome to be healthy, because if you feed it fiber, it's happy. If you feed it sugar, it turns on you and becomes a liability, not a help, right? And nutritional deficiencies cause the whole thing to fall apart, because then neither your brain nor your immune system nor your microbiome are working optimally, and they can't communicate optimally. And that's when things start to fall apart. And epigenetics is a whole other discussion for another day, but it has to do with food also, and all the other things, lifestyle, that we're going to talk about. Epigenetics is about how you express certain genes and not others to keep yourself healthy as can be as well. So moving on from brain and sleep and meditation and microbiome, let's go through some other key important things that get neglected because they're so basic. They seem like they can't really do much. But that's just not true. Au contraire, it is some of the most important thing you can do is the basics. That should sound obvious, but for some reason, it's not always so clear. So hydration, everything works with water. You are 75-ish% water, even though you're solid, we're water. And one of the first things your immune system needs when it sees a problem and wants to get ramped up for a threat is more water. because it needs to make more cells, more antibodies. It needs to make more mucus so you're slippery and sliding and things don't stick. All sorts of reasons. A low-grade fever uses up a ton of water. All sorts of reasons why you need to have adequate hydration in general, but even a little bit more if you're feeling like you're fighting something off. We all know about washing our hands, but let's just parlay that into our skin in general. Our skin is our first line of defense for our immune system. It stops things from getting into us, right? So if your skin is cracked and chapped and really dry, you have a much worse defense barrier, and bugs can get into you through your skin more easily. So washing your hands, because our hands are what we touch the world with and our faces with, and that's a portal of entry, our eyes, our nose, our mouth. Washing your hands frequently is of course important. Personally, I don't do the happy birthday song. I do a few big breaths in, big breaths out. So 5 in, 5 out, 5 in, 5 out, 20 seconds, you're done. You combine meditation, mindfulness with hand washing, works for me. And then because we're all washing our hands so much, make sure you put on lotion, thick, heavy, nice lotion all the time, so that by washing them to keep yourself safe, you don't create cracks and dry skin, which in turn makes you a little bit more at risk. So wash them and hydrate them both, okay? Laughter. I wish I had an hour just to talk to you about the science behind laughter. It is phenomenal, but clearly laughter is a programmed evolutionary trigger that when we're laughing, we're safe. We're not in famine, we're not in fear, we're not running for our lives. Therefore, we can relax, and our immune systems and our brains can relax. We're not always looking for a threat when we're laughing. It turns out even fake laughing, even holding your face in an artificial smile, will actually do the same thing. So programmed, so hardwired are we to know that laughter and pleasure and joy mean that the world is safe and we don't have to be hyper vigilant looking for threats everywhere. That's just so important. So please watch some comedies, have some fun, make it part of your list of medicinal things to do for your immune system. Exercise is fascinating because not enough gets you sick, too much gets you sick. There's this sweet spot. There's this, mama bear thing right in the middle, Goldilocks, whatever that is. So this is just a nerdy slide on one side showing that NK, natural killer cells, which are part of your immune system, your white cells go up. So do T cells and B cells, which is great with moderate exercise. But once you go a little too far, once you start being a marathon runner or overdoing it, then you start to have problems and you have a worse immune function, just like you did when you weren't exercising at all. So moderate exercise is the message here. Your brain believes everything you tell it. My brain believes everything I tell it. That's why I don't go to scary movies. I'm scared out of my wits. My brain believes me. Part of it's saying it's a screen, part of it's saying they're gonna kill me. And my brain believes me. My brain also believes my self-talk. So does your brain. So be careful how you are talking to yourself, because not only are you listening, but you believe everything you tell your brain. So self-talk can lead to anxiety and stress unnecessarily. My advice to myself and to my people, my friends and my patients is talk to yourself the way you would talk to a dear friend or a child, nicely. You can criticize, you can say, but you do it with love. You don't tell yourself you're stupid and how forgetful you are and all these horrible things. Don't talk to yourself that way. Your brain believes you, so be nice. Be nice to others and to yourself. And then one of the most important ones is community. There's tons of studies that people who have any belief in something bigger than themselves do better in every illness, heart disease, stroke, all of it, hospitalizations, antibiotic use, pain medications, whether you believe in the Yankees or God or the city of New York, whatever, if you believe in something that's important, that's not just you do better. You are a healthier person. And I love Patch Adams. Dr. Adams is one of my heroes. And I think he's really right when he says you cannot separate the health of an individual from the health of its community and therefore of the world and the globe and climate. Nature. Amazing studies that the exact same exercise, the same amount of oxygen consumed, the same amount of calories, the same amount of everything, controlled to the nth degree. If you do that indoors versus outdoors, you get more benefit outdoors. Same exact thing. There's something about nature. Again, we evolved in it. We need it. There's magnetic fields from the earth. There's the sun in the air. There's the sound of birds. It all just, again, tells our brain, whew, we're okay. We're where we belong. Life is good. Life is happening as it should. There are trees and leaves and birds. I'm not alone. All's well with the world. Because your brain tells your immune system whether to be hypervigilant and looking for trouble all the time, or whether your immune system can be just chill and keep you safe without creating inflammation. So nature is much more important than you might think. And you know, I'm lucky where I live. I'm able to go out for a walk in the woods every single day, even during all of this nutty stuff. But I really feel for my friends who are in Manhattan or in Rome, as one of our friends hasn't left her apartment in many, many days. That's tough. So even just apparently looking at pictures of nature has been shown to have some improvement over not looking at pictures if you cannot get outside. So just to summarize our 12 points, sleep. It's a brain, immune, microbiome thing that we're talking about. The immune system is not just by itself, right? So anything you can do to make your brain calmer, happier will improve your immune function. So sleeping, meditating, or just being more mindful. You can look up mindfulness, and you can be mindful while you chop vegetables at night. You can be mindful while you're going for a walk. Mindfulness is just being in the moment. Eating a plant-based diet for both your own nutrition to feed your microbiome, which in turn feeds you, all really, really critical. Supplements, there's some basic ones. I personally believe that Juice Plus is a basic supplement that we should all be taking because the research is unparalleled and nothing else is like it. And we should all be eating really well. And we should all take vitamin D. And then the rest is as needed supplements, extra things if you are personally in need of those. Anything to help your microbiome is good. An angry microbiome is going to create inflammation and bad signals to both your immune function and your brain. A healthy microbiome is fed a lot of fiber, is fed a lot of antioxidants and plant foods, and has not gotten a lot of antibiotics and has not gotten a lot of other stuff done to it. And if it has, it's been treated nicely and fixed. Keep your microbiome healthy and happy. It will serve you. Hydrating, critical. You can look up water. It's just involved in every single part of your brain, body. You need it. Skincare, we mentioned briefly. Washing your hands, of course. Laughter. Exercise in moderation. Self-talk. I think gratitude should be in there. It's one of the most important self-talk things we can do to stop anxiety and runaway fears, is just being grateful and just realizing how much we have to be grateful for. And then being something that's bigger than you, whatever that is to you, whatever that means to you, whatever community you belong to, that's important. And then lastly, nature. So just to remind you, you have an awesome army taking care of you. You have super ops and James Bond all rolled into one. They do some amazing feats to keep you safe. Don't underestimate them, and be proud and feel good and safe that you have these guys. And then lastly, if this can work, I'll be so happy. This is just to end with a little video of a white cell chasing a bunch of little bacteria. It works, cool. So do you see that big clunky thing moving around, chasing those little dot things? The little dot things are bacteria. That big thing is a macrophage, and it's trying to engulf this bacteria. And this is live time. This is a real video of a real cell. And you'll see at the end, it does it right about here. Boom. It just engulfed that bacteria. Now those bacteria are inside that cell being destroyed. That's your immune system at work. Pretty cool. So thank you all for your attention. I hope you learned a little something that was useful to you. I hope you think that Juice Plus might be something smart to add to your family's diet. I sure do. I hope you look into Terra Gardens as a way to have independent, clean food in your living room at all times, like I do. And then lastly, ask whoever invited you to this for more information, and then share our information, because the world needs to get healthier.